Alright, so on a box and whisker plot, we all know that it looks like this. Remember that you have 4 different quartiles. Remember, what does a quartile sound like? Quarter. And how much is a quarter? 25 cents. So if this box and whisker plot is divided into 4 different quartiles, what percentage is each quartile? 25%, okay? So this percent is 25%, or this piece is 25% of the data. So then if I move over to this, how much total data would that be? 50%. What about here? 75%. And then the whole thing would be 100%, okay? And then remember, this whole thing would be your first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and fourth quartile. Okay, so Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. You also have your different parts of the box and whisker. So remember your 2 end points. Your lowest one, that is your minimum. Or like they call it on this sheet, your lower extreme. And then your highest number is your upper extreme, or your maximum. And then this number right here, so that's 30, that is your lower quartile number, your higher quartile, your upper quartile. And then what is that middle line in the box? What does it stand for? Median. Your median, okay? So of course, if you are given your set of data like this and asked to draw a box and whisker plot, what's the very first thing I've got to do with those numbers? Put them in order from least to greatest, okay? From then, you can find your median and your lower and upper extreme, your upper and lower quartiles, and then all you have to do is plot them on that line, okay? You're not always going to be given your number line, so you've got to figure out what type of scale you want to count by. So as long as you have your lowest number and your highest number included on that scale, it doesn't really matter. I don't mind if you start at 0 or not. Okay. So then you just draw your numbers, or draw your actual box on there. So remember, your middle line is your median, so your box goes around those 3 middle dots, and then you just extend a line out to those upper and lower extremes. The bottom down here is in case you forgot how to find a couple of different things. So if you forgot to find your range, you can find your range by subtracting your largest and smallest numbers. Okay. Your quartiles, it tells you again, divide into 4 equal parts. The median of your lower half is the set of data that is your lower quartile. So everybody remember that. So once you find your median, in order to find your lower quartile, you're going to find the median of all the numbers lower than that median. Okay. So you're finding the median again, but of all the lower numbers. And then to find it of the upper half, that is your upper quartile. So the median of all the numbers larger than your middle number.
So when you do it for the least to find that lower quartile, do you still use that higher one? Do you still use that median?
No. So your median number you are not including. So once you find your middle number, maybe put a circle around it, and then you're finding the median of all the numbers less than that, not including that middle number. Okay, good question. All right, so then it just gives you a few different examples down here of how to actually find those numbers with the set of data. We're not going to really go through that because we're going to build one on our own. So flip over. All of your homework, and for the most part of what's going to be on our test, you're not going to be building the box and whiskers. We're going to build one in class just so we can remember how to do it. But for all the work that you're going to do for homework, it will already give you the graph. You're just going to be answering questions about it. Okay, so you've got to know what your median means and your different quartiles. You've got to know how to look at a graph and answer specific questions about that graph. Okay. So everybody getting your book out, turn to page 507. So page 507 in your book. We're going to be looking at number 7. So this is the problem we're looking at. Number 7, right here. Everybody there? Alright, so the table over here is showing the length of the coastline for 13 states among the Atlantic coast. So we're going to make the box and whisker, and then once we do that, we're going to answer a couple of questions about that plot, okay? But first, we're going to use these numbers over here. And what is the very first step I need to do? I need to put all those numbers in order. So let's do that. Okay, so step 1 is going to be put them in order. All right, so what's my lowest number?
13.
13. And then
28.
28. 31. 40. And then 100. What's after 100? 112. 127. 130. 187. 192. What? 228. 301. And 580. So it said we should have 13 states, so I should have 13 numbers here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we've got all our numbers. Now it's kind of hard for y'all to see up there. Okay, so now that I have them all in order, now what do I need to find? I need to find my median. So I'm looking for the middle number. So I'm just going to take my fingers. $127. I'm going to go ahead and circle that so I know that that is my middle number. So now that I have found my median, what do I want to find next? What? The extremes? The lower extreme and upper extreme? Okay.
It has to be in order.
What?
You said what you want to find next.
No. You could find your lower and upper extreme, or you could find your lower quartile, your upper quartile. It doesn't really matter. You just got to find all your pieces first before you can build it. So my lower extreme, which in the math workshop we called this our minimum. What is that? 13. That's just the lowest number. Here's where it gets a little tricky. We actually have an outlier, don't we? Do you remember what an outlier is? What is it? A number that is way out of place, right? So if I look at that max number, I don't really want to use that as my max number because there's a huge jump from 301 to 580. I've got an 800 or a 280 difference right there. Or if you look at all my other numbers, I went from 13 to 28 to 31 to 40 to 100 to 112. They're all reasonably close to each other, right? But when I get to 301 and jump up to 580, that's a huge jump. So 580 is actually my outlier. So I am not going to say that that is my max because that would skew my data big time. Okay. So I'm going to say my upper extreme or my max is at 301. All right, what else do I need to find? My what quartile? Lower. We want to find lower first? Okay, it doesn't matter. My lower quartile. And how do I find that again? What? Right, I'm finding the median of all the numbers less than that main median, right? So it's the median of my lower half. So remember, like Amaya asked, do I include this 127? No. So I'm going to start at 13 and 112, and I'm going to work my fingers in. So I've got 31 and 40. So how do I get that? What do I do? Right, I've got to add those two middle numbers and divide by 2. And what is it? 35.5. So now I need to find my upper quartile. So remember, I'm not using that 127. So what are my two middle numbers? 192 and 288, or 228, sorry. So what is my lower, or my upper quartile? Did you divide that by 2? 210. Do I need to find anything else, or can I draw my plot now? I can draw it now, right? So first off, I need to figure out how am I going to count my number line. So I've got to go from 13 all the way up to 580. So what are we thinking? Definitely not counting by 1s or 5s, right? Because that would go on forever and ever. What about 10s? That still means I would have like 50 different numbers to write on there, right? I like 50s. What do you think about 50s? Let's do 50s. So step 3 is going to be to actually draw the plot. Okay. Not a very straight line. So if I'm counting by 50s, I'm going to start at 0. And I'm just going to label my 100s. What do I need to go up to?
500.
I need to go all the way up to 600, right?
How many little lines we need?
Hmm?
How many little lines we need?
12. Right? All right. So can I start plotting everything? Yeah. I'm just going to go ahead and plot my lower extreme and upper extreme first. So my largest and my, well, next to smallest, right? So my lower extreme is 13. So of course I'm just going to have to estimate. But it's going to be pretty close to my 0. My upper extreme is 301. So right at 300. And then remember, I had an outlier 580, so I'm going to plot it on there, but it's not going to actually be connected to my graph. It's just going to be a dot. Okay. So that right there is your outlier. Come on. I'll be writing this. All right, so what next? Doesn't matter what I plot in order. Let's go ahead and plot my median. So it's at 127. It'll be kind of close to 100. And then my lower quartile and upper quartile, which is going to be the end of my box. So 35 and a half. And 210. So like I said, my lower quartile and upper quartile are the end of my box. I'm going to go ahead and draw it. And then what do I put in the middle where that median is? A line, too. And then what do I do to my minimum and maximum? Draw a line. It's not perfect. Maybe yours looks better. Got it? Any questions about how to build it? It's an outlier.
Yeah.
Remember, it's a number that is like it sticks out. So remember when I'm looking at my numbers up here, from when I go from 301 to 580, there's a huge gap. So that's how I know it's an outlier.
It's called a what?
Outlier. Right there. O-U-T-L-I-E-R. All right, so that is part A. So part B, it asks me what percent of the coastline states have coastlines greater than 210 miles. So my 210 was actually one of my numbers that I plotted, right? It was my upper quartile. So it's right here. So it's asking what percent of states have a coastline greater than that. So what percent of these states would that be? Rylan, what'd you say? 25, right? Remember we have quartile 1, quartile 2, quartile 3, and quartile 4. And they're all 25%. So if I'm looking for the amount of states that have a coastline from 210 up to 310 or 301, that would be 25% of my data. Did everybody see that?
How is that 25%?
Because that is one quartile. 210 was right here at my lower quartile. So if it's asking for states greater than that, that's that very last quartile, so it's got to be 25%. Remember, each quartile is 25%. So this is 25% of your data. This is 25%, 25%, and 25%. So if it's asking for the states that have a greater coastline than 210, then it's looking for that fourth quartile, which would be 25%. Does that make sense? Remember, if you look over here at the top, each little piece is 25% of data. So I'm looking at that very last piece, which is 25%. All right, what about C? It is asking, or it says half of the states have a coastline less than how many miles? So where would my half mark be? The median, right? Which is right here in the middle of the box. So it's asking half of the states have a coastline less than what? Less than 127, because that is my median. So less than 127 miles. Make sense? D is where it gets a little tricky. Not really tricky, you just got to think a little bit more about it. D asks to write a sentence describing what the length of the Box and Whisker plot tells about the number of miles of coastline for states along the Atlantic coast. So you're kind of looking at that box and trying to come up with some type of sentence that describes that Box and Whisker. Okay? So if you look at the actual box of it, does anything look different about it? My middle line's kind of somewhat in the middle of that box, right? So, I mean, it looks kind of like a normal box that's divided in two. But what if you look at your upper and lower quartile? This one's short and this one's kind of long, right? So, what can you say about that? What do you think? Ishan?
Upper quartile is more spread out than the lower.
Yeah, exactly. The upper quartile, the coastline is it's varying a lot different. So it's more spread out. And then down here, it's closer together, okay? So we're going to say the top, what percent would that be? 25%. The top 25% of the state's coastline I'm going to say varies greatly. Do you know what that means? There's a big difference, okay? Does that make sense? So if I say that it varies greatly, which you don't have to use all of this when you're doing your homework. Okay. It just is telling me that the top 25%, there's a lot larger or a lot difference in your coastlines. Okay. Where the lower 25% doesn't have a lot going on. It's all pretty close to each other. So the lower 25% of state's coastline doesn't vary much. So that's basically all you're doing for your homework and how your test will be. You're not going to be asked to draw. So that whole part 8, you're not really going to be asked to draw that. But you might need to figure out, you might need to know how to find all those pieces of information. Okay? But we want you to know how to read that graph. So to be able to ask questions and answer those questions based on that graph. Does that make sense? So all your homework, all you're doing is just answering questions about graphs that are already given to you. Okay, so your homework is, page 506, numbers 2, 8, 9, and 10. So only 4 problems. They've only got, I think, 2 parts to them. So I think it's like 9 or 10 problems total.
How is it supposed to be looking at this? I know that.